I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
Joe Biden has dug in his heel. The 81-year-old president and the White House are insisting that he will run for a second consecutive term, saying that his devastating debate performance was simply a bad night. Now, it seems unlikely that Biden will be able to hold on till November. The calls for him to resign are now coming from inside the House and will only grow as the president continues to make embarrassing gaffes at every public campaign appearance. Now, I'm not surprised that a mentally incapacitated elderly man and his power-hungry wife and handlers won't step aside. If you follow Democratic Party politics for even a second, you won't be surprised either. What's more stunning is the hundreds of liberal elites in Canada and the US who went along with the charade that Biden was up for the job these past 4 years. Some of these same voices have now turned on Biden after championing him just 4 years ago, when the reality of his age was already apparent to all of us. The same situation played out during COVID. The managerial class only began to wonder if it was time to do away with mask and vaccine mandates, when sanity had long prevailed elsewhere in the world. So if even Canadian media elites are turning on Biden, you can bet your bottom dollar that his political career has long been over. I'm Rachel Parker, and this is Rachel in the Republic. Okay, everyone, and before we dive into today's story, I just wanted to take a little time to explain why we're doing this show and how it's going to differ from some American coverage of the US election and what you can expect to see on Rachel and the Republic in the coming months. You guys already know that Canada and the US, our economies are so closely intertwined. A lot of that has to do with trade. Of course, the US is our number one trade partner. If Donald Trump is elected president on November 5th, he has said he will implement a 10% tariff on all imports entering the US. That means that Canadian businesses that do a lot of business in the States, sell all their products there, will likely see a decrease in competitiveness and could also potentially eat into their revenues as they have to deal with this 10% tariff. Of course, sectors like automotives, lumber, and agriculture will be disproportionately affected. But there's likewise benefits to a Donald Trump presidency. Trump is a staunch supporter of the energy sector and said he would like to increase production in the US. We know that Alberta has been looking to increase production and to get more exports out to America, so they might have an in there if there's a Trump presidency. Of course, you guys know I cover a lot of Alberta news. I'll be keeping a close eye on this. Could also be a good thing for the border crisis. Yes, when we talk about the border crisis, we're usually talking about it in an American context, but we are also running into many issues here in Canada with hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers in our country, and we are paying to put them up at hotels. We are paying for their food. Many of them are crossing at our southern border. If there's less asylum seekers coming in at the US border, and there's been so many more under Biden than under Trump, then we're likely going to see less of them coming up to the north and trying to get into Canada, where we welcome them with open arms and lots of taxpayer dollars. Another issue that we will be paying close attention to is the Liberals. They are hoping for a Donald Trump win so that they can scare voters they've lost back into voting for them. We've already seen their desperate efforts to tie federal conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, and we can definitely expect to see more of that. I'll have lots of coverage on that in the coming weeks. In contrast, a Joe Biden presidency will come into conflict with a Pierre Poilievre government on issues like the border and, of course, the environmental agenda. So these are just some of the issues that we will be taking a look at over the next few weeks on Rachel in the Republic. And if there's another topic you are hoping to see coverage of, please let me know in the comments below. I do usually read through all of those. Now, taking a look at Canadian liberal media who have flipped the script on Joe Biden after championing him just 4 years ago. Let's start with everyone's favorite paper, the Toronto Star. They were very praiseworthy of Joe Biden back in 2020, and now we've seen their main columnist, Susan Delacourt. She is with the National Press Gallery up in Ottawa, where I worked about 4 years ago. She has been very critical of Biden on X in the last few days. During the debate, she started off this criticism writing, "Is Joe Biden okay?" No, he's not okay. You know that. I know that. We've known that for a while. We were saying that 4 years ago, saying he shouldn't have run. Then later in the week, there was a story that Biden is trying to reassure Democrats and reassure voters that he's going to be up for the job. Now he's going to start going to bed at 8 so he can get more rest, maybe be a little sharper. It doesn't seem to be working. He's still making lots of gaffes in his public appearances.
So say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady? And are you guys just not, since February, testing President Biden for Parkinson's or for dementia, because if he gets a bad result, it's all over that day.
All right, thanks, everybody.
In response to that news, Delacourt wrote on Twitter, voting results on November 5 are going to go late, just FYI. So what we're seeing here is that the tides have turned and people are largely recognizing that Biden is too old for this job. And we're seeing that liberal media wants to jump on this bandwagon. They weren't willing to point it out 4 years ago. They were too afraid then to go against the grain. They never want to go against the government talking points. But because everyone is now calling for Biden to step aside and allow for someone younger, even though, as I mentioned last week, it seems like it would largely be too late for the party to do that easily. The liberal media, they feel like it's safe to jump on this bag when they kind of want to, they want to get attention for this. They're trying to be funny. They're trying to be clever. They're trying to join in the momentum of people calling for Biden to resign. It really is too late, especially when you think about what the role of media is. The role of media is to uncover stories and inform Canadians, and the opposite is happening. Canadians are forming the media, and after enough Canadians or Americans speak up about an issue, then the media begins covering it because they feel that it is safe to do so. Now, we can't talk about Delacourt's coverage of Biden if we didn't talk about what she said back in 2020, just 4 years ago, when many conservatives were already raising the alarm that Biden was too old. He was going to finish out his first term at 81, and if he did his second term, he would be 85. Most people in their 80s, they should be at home, they should be retired. But as we covered last week, Biden's wife, she is very power hungry. Sounds like his handlers around him are not allowing him to really understand the full level of criticism that is being levied at Biden every single day. There's been reports out that are saying that he only has a couple top aides that are in his ear, and he gets upset when they tell him negative coverage of him. So they have learned how to spin the news to make it seem positive all the time. So, these are very selfish people. They've done a disservice to Biden and to the American people, and certainly to their party. Here's what Delacourt wrote about Biden and how unselfish he was compared to Donald Trump just 4 years ago. She wrote at the time, quote, "At one point, Biden talked about his love of a song called American Anthem, and the particular verse he called profound, at least for me. That small qualifying phrase was a noteworthy departure from a predecessor who made everything all about himself all the time. Even as Trump went aloft in Air Force One for the last time on Wednesday, winging his way to Florida, Frank Sinatra's My Way blasted out of the speakers on the ground." So, obviously Delacourt has really lost the plot here. I think anytime you're criticizing a Frank Sinatra song, you should just take a step back and really think about what you're saying. One of the best musicians of all time. Really no criticism could be levied at anyone ever for playing one of Frank Sinatra's songs. But the great irony here is that she's talking about how unselfish Joe Biden is compared to Donald Trump. When this is someone who is clinging to the presidency with everything he has, even when calls from within the party are coming for him to step down. The American people are saying they don't believe him to be agile enough to complete this job. And here he is clinging to his presidency, and the Democratic Party will lose the election as a result of that. Delacourt really missed the boat on this one. A lot of us recognized that was going to be the case 4 years ago. She's not the only one. We're also going to take a look at longtime CTV host Evan Solomon. He left that position a few years ago to immediately join the Eurasia Group. Yes, that's the same group that is vice-chaired by Justin Trudeau's bestie, Gerald Butts. Again, this is one of those cases where we say that media is biased and we have suspicions about it. And then when a member of the media who's been working in the media for a long time resigns, they often leave to join a very liberal organization, just as has happened with Solomon. And it sort of just goes to show that our fears about them being very liberal in their coverage were correct all along. So in the last days, Solomon has emerged as a very vocal critic of Biden. Just going to give you a little taste of some of the criticism that he's levied at Biden. He wrote on X, "It is a catastrophic turn for the Democrats, and now they have turned on their nominee and Biden has done little, even after a better interview tonight or a good defense of his record to turn it around. He remains in serious trouble and his cognitive ability is still in doubt." He also wrote, "Not sure why Biden thought 15 minutes in a pretty soft and basic interview on the only topic that matters would flip the script. All candidates always believe they can win, but at 81, no matter how strong he looked or his record, do people believe he will be strong at 85? No, people don't believe that, and most people were already warning about this during the 2020 presidential race. They were saying he's too old now, he's going to finish at 81, and then if he wants to run another term, he'll be 85. So, for example, here is Solomon commenting on Biden during the 2020 presidential debate. He said, quote, A few things. If Biden sometimes looked flustered or weak, he did not look senile or like he had dementia, as Trump supporters like the Trump kids repeat. So here, Solomon is attacking the exact criticisms that he is now agreeing to 4 years on. He's agreeing that there's a problem with Biden's cognitive ability. 4 years ago, he was gaslighting those of us who were saying there was an issue. And we see this time and time again with liberal media where they ask us to deny something that we can see with our own eyes. The best example of this is, of course, always going to be COVID, when there were those of us who had concerns about the COVID-19 vaccines, about whether there would be vaccine mandates, and of course, the efficacy and safety of the vaccines. We were told that the vaccines were totally safe by the same media who is just now starting to write some negative stories of the COVID-19 vaccines. Of course, we know we were all proven correct. The vaccines were not safe. They were not effective. They were not even tested to stop transmission. And it was just another scenario where a lot of us saw the writing on the wall and the media told us that we were wrong and tried to gaslight us into believing we were the problem. You probably remember that horrible Toronto Star front page that ran talking about how people who were not vaccinated against COVID-19 deserve to die and how they didn't deserve coverage. Really sick things. So when you see coverage from these types of papers and these types of reporters, always take everything with a grain of salt, because these are people who have proven time and time again not to have the Canadian people's best interest at heart. In contrast, these government-funded media are often carrying the government's water and repeating government talking points. So I wasn't the only person to notice this phenomena. Ben Shapiro was talking about it on Fox News, and he really aptly sort of summarized what's going on here with the media being late to the story. Take a listen.
But the media at times have been sharply critical of the Biden presidency, the deadly withdrawal from Afghanistan, presiding over an open border that took many months to gain traction. So it's not like it's all one-sided, and it's not like you were supporting him before.
No, I think that what you saw in some of these cases, the border in particular, was sort of people arriving late on the scene. So the media, for the first few months, basically denied anything was happening at the border, downplayed it. And then, of course, as it became undeniable, then you have to cover it. And I think that's one of the things you're seeing right now, is now Biden's decline is undeniable. And so the media now have to cover it because it's totally undeniable. But that shouldn't be the job of the media. The media should be first on the scene, not last on the scene. It shouldn't be some rando Twitter account that's covering the news. And 6 months later, the media are like, hey, by the way, that rando Twitter account, turns out he was right. It should be the media. They're the ones with the most access.
And when we talk about the media being very late to the story, 7 Democrats in Congress have now publicly called for Joe Biden to step down. Biden is obviously resisting these calls for now, but lawmakers have told Axios they expect the drumbeat to continue amid a barrage of fears from constituents and donors. And obviously, the donor dollars are the things that really push the party forward. You need a massive war chest to fund any campaign, and certainly a presidential election campaign. So if donors are now fearful and are pulling back, that's going to really cause the party to continue to apply pressure on Biden and on the handlers around him who are not being honest with him about the situation on the ground. Just another hilarious story from the Daily Wire this week. According to the White House's own official transcripts, President Biden's speaking errors have grown steadily worse, with his rate of missteps doubling in the 12 months leading to his disastrous debate performance in June. So the White House actually prepares transcripts of Biden's speeches and remarks, and they cross out his erroneous words or insert the word he should have said using brackets. I was actually surprised to learn this. I feel like the White House is so dishonest. I am surprised they don't just try to lie about what he said and make it appear as if he said it right the first time. Obviously, it'd be fairly easy for reporters or anyone who's paying attention to fact check them, but that hasn't seemed to bother them in the past. So they had to correct Biden's erroneous words a staggering 51 times in May 2024, the month ahead of his debate. He was then whisked out of the public eye for much of June as he was busy preparing for the debate. But you can see this graphic. The red bar represents the rate of his speaking errors per 10,000 words spoken. In the 12 months leading up to the debate, you can just see that trend is spiking upwards. In comparison, in June 2023, the White House corrected 33 errors, amounting to an error rate of 3.2 per 10,000 words. The 51 errors in May led to a rate of 7.2 for that month when he spoke 70,000 words. So it's doubled. And one of the most hilarious corrections they had to issue at a rally in Madison, Wisconsin, Biden was trying to address the crowd's fears, that he's too old to run. He's repeating that he's going to run against Donald Trump. And he said,
I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020.
So obviously for anyone who's come and they've hoped to see Biden live and to have their fears about his age sort of assuaged, probably the opposite happened here. The sitting U.S. president isn't even really aware of what year it is. Here's another clip from Biden this week. He did this interview with ABC News, largely in an attempt to reassure people that he was up for the job. It was a little bit more well-spoken than he was on the debate night, but still fumbling through his words, still trailing off, still lots of awkward and long pauses. My favorite clip from that I'm going to play for you guys next is where he's arguing with the host about crowd sizes. It's probably best for anyone running against Donald Trump not to argue about crowd sizes, but Biden went for it anyways. Take a listen.
What's your plan to turn the campaign around?
You saw it today. How many people do you draw crowds like I drew today? You find many more enthusiastic than today? Huh?
I mean, I don't think you want to play the crowd game. Donald Trump can draw big crowds. There's no question about that.
He can draw a big crowd, but what does he say? Who does he have? I'm the guy supposedly in trouble.
The best part is that line at the end there. Who does he have? Who does he have? Biden is so bad for always attacking Republican voters. You'd think that as someone who's running for president, he would want to try to attract as many voters as possible, but instead he's constantly insulting Trump's voters. You don't really see Trump do that with the Democrat base. I think he's smart enough to understand that there are people in the middle and you need to win those voters over in order to win the presidency, but that's obviously lost on Biden. He insulted Trump voters during the debate, and here he's insulting again everyone who's going to show up to a Trump rally. Finally, we've saved the best for last. We're going to talk a little bit about what Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is doing this week on the campaign trail. He was very energized. He held a rally in Florida this week. Now, the topic of speculation right now is who Trump is going to pick for his vice president. There's been a lot of teasing from him about this. He teased again at that rally saying, everyone thinks I'm going to announce Marco Rubio tonight. And then of course he didn't announce, but we are expecting to get that announcement by Friday. So certainly by the time you're listening to this, the information could be almost out of date, or we could have an answer very soon on who that VP is going to pick. There has been some speculation. Marco Rubio, as I mentioned, a 3-term senator from Florida, is one choice people expect to see. He's been a long time ally of Trump. As well, J.D. Vance, a senator from Ohio, he's a rising star in the Republican Party. He's been a very strong advocate for Trump's populist policies and a very vocal critic of the Biden administration. So he's been sort of floated as another possible contender. And finally, Doug Bergman, the governor of North Dakota, has been sort of floated. I haven't heard his name quite as much as I've heard J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, but certainly that's sort of the exciting announcement everyone is waiting for from the Trump campaign at the moment, and we will probably have that answer for you guys next week, Friday. As I mentioned, he is expected to announce his VP by Friday. So my question of the week for you all is, who do you think the VP pick will be? Post your selection in the comment section below. We'll see who the winner is next week. That's all we have time for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this week's show. If you want to support our work, you can do that over at donate.tnc.news. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to True North so you don't miss any of our content. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend, and God bless.